وعجل فرجهم ولعن أعداءهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وأعز المرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين، شفيع ذنوبنا وحبيب قلوبنا، المصطفى الأمجد، حبيب إله العالمين، أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المنتجبين، واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم ومناقبهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين، آمين رب العالمين. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، فذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dearest brothers and sisters, I begin with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I begin by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts from us our fast, inshaAllah, and accepts from us our prayers during these holy nights of Ramadan. And I do thank the organizers and the brothers and whoever else is Khalf al-Kawalis, as we say, who are able to put this together. And best of all, and the most important is, I thank the attendees that were able to join us every night. I know it's very difficult to be able to join these sessions on Zoom because of the interactiveness is different, right? But we were still able to revive 10 nights of Shahr Ramadan as well, with the remembrance of Sahib al-Amr, Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. So the fact that we were able to incorporate Sahib al-Zaman in these nights, we only ask that Sahib al-Zaman, inshaAllah, on the Day of Judgment and in the rest of our lives, he also look upon us with his grace, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and grant us that mercy and accept our a'mal during these nights. Now, as we mentioned yesterday, that today is going to be an informal session, but I did want to start with a piece of advice for myself and for everybody else, and almost in a way just kind of looking back at what we did and summarizing everything in the last 10 nights. So for those who have been with us, of course, we're aware of the journey that we had in the last 10 nights. And our journey began, of course, and our intention began by saying that, you know what, this is the month of Shahr Ramadan. And this is the month where, in a way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forced us to enter in a sort of routine. And then we said, you know what, it is only rational that we take advantage of the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. And you know what, we're just going to include Sahib al-Zaman in this time. But at the same time, we said, you know what, yes, we're including him, but at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has included him to begin with. So it's not really, yes, rationally speaking, it is important. But then we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has included Sahib al-Amr in this month. And we discussed many things concerning Sahib al-Zaman. There is one thing actually that I forgot to mention, that I want to, as a reminder, inform you, is that in the books of Ad'iyah, I'm not sure if it's in Mafatih al-Jinan, but in the books of Ad'iyah, many of you are aware of Dua al-Faraj, right? Allahumma kulli waliyaka al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, salawatuka alayhi wa ila akhirih. It is actually very highly recommended to recite Dua al-Faraj as much as you can on the nights of Qadr, right? Nights of Qadr meaning the 19th, the 21st, and the 23rd, according to the narrations. And of course, if your time is tight, our narrations even tell us that if you are able to even fit in the last 10 days of Shahr Ramadan in ibadah, then by all means, use the last 10 nights of Shahr Ramadan for your ibadah. That's just a plug that I wanted to do. That's very important. And now going back to our discussion. So then, of course, we went to the best of a'mal, and we talked about Intidhar al-Faraj. And my dear brothers and sisters, we all yearn to be from amongst those who anticipate the relief of the Imam, right? We are all waiting for the time in which the dua that we recite during Shahr Ramadan, right? When we say, Allahumma shba' kulli ja'i', right? Allahumma rad kullu gharibin ila watanih, right? Like when we say, may Allah, oh Allah, everyone who was hungry, make sure you give them that sustenance so they're not hungry anymore. Anybody who was gharib, anybody who was a stranger, not in his town, not in his city, let him return back to his home, right? Anybody who was marid, who was sick, all of these things that we pray for. Allahumma Allah arzuqni rizqan tamman, rizqan salihan, rizqan halalan. Oh Allah, grant me a rizq that's halal, a rizq that keeps on coming. All of these du'as, it's important for you to realize that when you're praying for these things, understand that the reality of these things will truly happen when the dhuhur of Imam al-Mahdi comes. Because in our narrations we read that when Imam Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman comes, that in al-arda takhruju kunuzaha, the earth begins to overflow and its treasures begin to come out, and it will become so blessed that the mu'mineen with tay al-ard, with a blink of an eye, would come to meet the Imam and take whatever they need from sustenance from the Imam, and then go back to their homes all in a couple of seconds or minutes, right? It sounds like a fairy tale, but here, yes, because we see it on TV through CG and whatever, these are fairy tales, yes, but this is not a fairy tale. This is the true wa'ad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given His awliya, the saints of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the righteous servants of Allah, these maqamat, that they're able to do this through the will of Allah. They are nothing. Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman is nothing without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, even a mu'min amongst ourselves can be at that maqam, as long as he is what? A muntadhar of Sahib al-Amr wa Zaman. Meaning what? Having ma'rifah of Sahib al-Amr. We said having ma'rifah does not just mean knowing that the Imam is the 12th Imam. Having ma'rifah means he's the 12th Imam, the son of the 11th Imam. His name is al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar, for example. Knowing his different kunyas that he has. What does Mahdi mean? What does Qa'im mean? Right? Or as you're aware, by the way, when we mention the word Qa'im as well, and in the hadith literature, it's mustahab to get up for the Imam. Get up and send your salutations towards the Imam. What does the name al-Muntaqim mean? What does the name al-Nasir mean? All of this, by merely asking the question, what does this name mean? You have already opened a door to seek ma'rifah of your Imam alayhi salam. By just coming and saying, so what does al-Muntadhar mean? What does al-Mahdi mean? Aren't all the Imams Mahdi? Aren't all the Imams Qa'im? It's true. But then there are special characteristics that each and every single Imam has, right? All the Imams are generous, correct? All the Imams have Jud. But there was one Imam who was known as Al-Jawad, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, the son of Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, right? There's all the Imams are Rida, have Rida in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but only one was given the name Ar-Rida. All the Imams are Mujtaba, but one was given Mujtaba, right? Everybody had the name, and just by asking that question, by just Googling online to try to understand what that name means, and reading the history of the Imams, like for example, the English series that is available online, The Life of the Imams by Baqir Sharif al-Qurashi. You'll find the life of Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussain, whole series that's been translated in English. You can find it in Farsi, you can find it in English, you can find it in Arabic, and Allahu A'lam, maybe there's other languages out there that I'm not aware of. But asking those questions, all of that is ma'rifah. And as soon as you have ma'rifah, don't begin to think, will I make it to the dhuhr of the Imam? Will I not make it to the dhuhr of the Imam? Have ma'rifah, and just know that if you have ma'rifah, you are with the Imam. You and your Imam will be shaking hands. On that day in your grave, when the Imam comes, an angel will come to the grave and tell you, do you wish to come to the earth right now and be with the Imam? Or do you wish to continue your life in this humble abode in paradise, in Barzakh? You'll be given the choice. That's number one. Ma'rifah is the foundation of intibah. After that, we mentioned, my dear brothers and sisters, some things as simple as we said, al-wara' and maharamillah, staying away from that which is haram, especially when it comes to Shahri Ramadan. For example, not breaking your fast upon that which is haram. And sometimes people don't realize that when it comes to eating haram, for example, sometimes it's not even about eating haram. Sometimes it's what you are eating is halal, but the means of it is haram. It also becomes haram. Meaning if the means of the wealth that you're attaining is haram, right? You are in some shady business that's considered haram by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever it may be, right? Then understand that the means for it and the intention, all of that counts. Having khuluq. Did you know that one day somebody came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi and told Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, we have a neighbor, right, who's Muslim, who prays and fasts and does everything, but they have such a bad tongue when it comes to their Jewish neighbor. I think it was Jewish neighbor or non-Muslim neighbor, whatever it may be. And then Rasulullah said, this woman who does not have akhlaq when it comes to her neighbor will not even smell the aroma of paradise from here until 200 years or 500 years. Because sometimes the Arabic language, we use the years as a measure of distance, right? She will never smell the aroma of paradise. Khuluq. Just dealing with your neighbor. If you look at the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, by the way, when they talk about the neighbor, they give you a very large area. It's not, by the way, if you think, yeah, my neighbor is just the guy next door. According to Al-Muhammad, the neighbor is, if I'm not mistaken, the whole block that you are in, for example, and even further than that, all of those individuals would be considered your neighbor, and you're responsible for them as well, if they need anything. All of this is under khuluq, right? Then, of course, we mentioned the importance of charity, the importance of generosity, the importance of strengthening your connection with the Imam in a way, my dear brothers and sisters, where you follow in the footsteps of those before you, such as Abu Talib and Khadija. Last 10 nights, we were blessed by Allah. I am also blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for it has been a very long time that I'm able to spend moments doing a lecture talking about Khadija and Abu Talib. I can't remember the last time I had an opportunity to do that, by the way. And I'm blessed to be able to do that, by the way. And I'm thankful, because these are individuals that are important personalities, because they teach you, how should I be towards the Imam of my time? When that moment comes, all these things that I love, I like my iPad, I love my computer, I love my video games, I love my Fortnite, I love whatever games you guys play today. I'm not a big fan of these games that I don't know how anybody plays Fortnite, but that's a different discussion we can have, right? That's not a real game. I don't know how anybody can play that game. I apologize to the kids, okay? I apologize. It's not my cup of tea. I like more of the adventure and the role-playing games, but that's me. But the question is, will I be able to part ways with that which I love? Ask yourself that question every day before you go to sleep. Before you go to sleep, this device that I have, for example, my hobby is also taking pictures, a camera. I have several vintage cameras that I'd like to take on film. Then I have one digital camera that I used to practice with. Am I able to part ways? For example, if I were to lose my camera one day, right? Sometimes we get so attached to these material objects that a scratch on our phone, we begin to freak out. If a scratch on our phone, we begin to freak out. So when you hear that the Imam's longing for his believers for all these years, right? In a way, that wound is so much more deeper. But we don't see the same emphasis when it comes to Sahib al-Amr, Ruhi lahu al-Fida. These are the important things, my dear brothers and sisters, that when it comes to intidar, we ought to have. And know that the Imam, Ruhi lahu al-Fida, according to the narrations that we have, the Imam loves the mu'mineen. In Mikyal al-Makaram, there's a section, if I'm not mistaken here, under the same section, I have it here in Arabic in front of me, under the same section where it says, and these are the things upon which it makes us obligatory upon us to pray for the Imam, it says number 7, حُبُّهُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ لَنَا, his love for us. And then he says here, يظهر مما مر في تلطفه بنا فإن اللطيف ثمرة المحبة. تلطف ثمرة المحبة. He says that his lutf, the Imam's grace for us, is the fruit of love. And when you love someone, in every way that you can, you try to show that love. And then, of course, He says, وَمِمَّا سَبَقَ فِي الْبَابِ الثَّالِث فِي حَقِّ الْوَالِدِ عَلَى الْوَلَدِ. And as for the previous chapter, we discussed the rights of the father upon his son. The Imam considers us in that state. We are like his children. The same way you have rights towards your father, and your father has rights towards you, vice versa. And then, of course, he mentions several other evidences, for example, and he mentions that there are various tawqi'ats that occurred from Imam al-Zaman to the Nawab. Something like, for example, inna laysa bi, I forgot what the word is, but it's in English, it's something like, we are very aware of the state of our Shia and we have not forgotten about them. That's what the Imam thinks about when it comes to the Shia. So my dear brothers and sisters, this is the advice that we give ourselves. I give myself, and I give it to all of us. It just doesn't apply to you, it applies to me as well, because there's still 20 days of Shahr Ramadan, and I still want to take advantage of it as well. And the last piece of thing I leave you, and some of you are going to be a bit confused because you've probably never heard of it before, but that is, and I'm going to ask this question actually, and this will begin to open. I do have an answer as well for the brother's question yesterday concerning Shalmaghani's books and stuff. I brought some sources, but I want to ask this question. So we have 3 distinctive Laylatul Qadr that we do, and from our narrations that we have, we've been given different a'mal and deeds for us to perform during these nights of Qadr. And the third one, according to the narrations, being Laylatul Qadr al-Kubra, and actually according to the narrations as well, that is the night on which it is expected to hear the sayha with the call of the coming of the Imam alayhi salam as well. My question is this: what do you think the greatest, or what is the best of a'mal for one to do specifically on that night, or at least one of the ones that at least is mentioned by our ulama, but unfortunately is completely neglected when it comes to Laylatul Qadr al-Kubra? So we know, okay, you have Surah Al-Rum, Surah Al-Ankabut, Dua Abu Hamza al-Thumali, for example. You have Dua Joshan al-Kabir, but actually when you look at the source of Dua Joshan al-Kabir, it actually tells you to read on the first night of Shahr Ramadan. That's a different, it's still it's a great dua, but the reward and benefit of Dua Joshan actually is on the first night of Shahr Ramadan. So keep that in mind, that next year on the first night, you might come off as unorthodox to your family members. I want to read Dua Joshan tonight on the first day of Ramadan. Tell them your mom and dad ask why. Be like, the Nas says it. The Nas says it's mustahab and highly recommended to read it on the first night of Shahri Ramadan, right? The rest, it's, at the end of the day, it's recommended to do anything, right? It's recommended. It's Laylatul Qadr, A'mal and Ziyarah. It's a night where all of everything is decreed for us. But we want to focus now. What do you think? I mean, we have dua, Ziyarat al-Hussain alayhi salam, very recommended. We have different adhkar. We have, for example, in the 19th, the 20th, and the 21st, that we recite Allahumma la'an qatalata Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam as much as you can. May Allah curse the killers of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Recite that 1,000 times, 100 times, how many times you can. Highly recommended. Also, actually, if you were, another surprise is the recitation of the la'na by saying Allahumma la'an qatalata al-Hussain alayhi salam is also highly recommended in those nights.